Mr. Ahrens here should not be removing the top bolt first. That is the last bolt to remove in removing a wing at any time, or and as the first bolt to use in installing the wing at any time. So, Wayne has been set up.
Thank you, Dave.
The ramifications here are not serious because he has no weight aft, and there's no special bolts in here. But the idea is that you don't want to end up putting this bolt and this bolt into torsion. So he's going to snug that one back up, and he can remove this one first or that one first. It doesn't really make any difference so long as that one is removed last. Go for it, Wayne. You can remove the bottom bolt. Now he ended up with one thin washer at the top and no washers in the other three positions. And we'll show you how this looked after we take it apart. Back with you in a moment. Okay, we're back at the scene of the original crime. And Wing is, on this particular occasion, he wasn't committing a crime because epoxy is holding the wing in place. Notice that it hasn't shifted up yet here. If this had moved upward and this wasn't matching here, now if I give it a good, there we go, flunko. The epoxy bond is now free. We're going to lift the wing off. Now at this particular time, not unusual, you need to move aft. Ah! Oh, my fingers. Haha, revenge is sweet. Okay, now you just keep coming aft. Hold on a second. Hold on. Hold still. Okay, now we move aft. Only for one reason. All of the bolts are packed with epoxy around them, and your fit is very, very tight. Okay. Hold it. All right, set her down. Just like it is. I'd go just where it is.
You got a gear leg in the way.
He's gonna miss. Down. You're safe and on a flat surface. Well, we're going to repeat this process, probably with not quite as much levity as we do on this one. And we'll be back with you and show you some new steps. Moments ago, we ran, I know. Gotta give it some leader. Moments ago, we ran out of tape, so we'll start from scratch here. We've allowed to secure, check the fit of the shaft, goes right on through. Check again the placement of the associated parts. Sing. I'm going to remove all the gloss from here. I'm going to remove any print from plastic tape and sand this area judiciously. Then I'm going to take something flat, like this. And I'm going to place it on top of the bushing with silver tape underneath it. And it's going to sit on top of the most logical place here for a straight transition from the top of this bushing onto this surface. So as you can see that, just essentially like so. Make a flat. And I'm going to do the same thing from the opposing side, and it does that very nicely. I'll probably go to a point about right here. And one piece there, one piece there. Allow to cure. It will be regular 2410, 2183, 84, 87, or the new PKMW, depending on where you are with your particular kit. So, my next step, I'll be back with you in a moment. Anywhere?
Recording.
Okay, here we go. Well, we've done this. We've done the re-sanding of the area, cleaned it up, got rid of all of the gloss, got rid of all of the gloss. He said, yes, he did, and made sure that everything fit. And I had a chance to rethink this, since what I want to do, I want to do this process all in one shot. I was showing you this before, thinking, yeah, we can do that. Well, we can do that if I have the time to want to wait for this one to cure and then want to put that one on, let that one to cure. I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I've mixed up 7 shots of resin here. I've got quite a bit of flocks here to do. I'm only going to do one of them at the moment. I'm going to smear some resin on this surface. And after I've done that, I'm not going to get the brush out for this operation. I'm going to smear it out about as far as I think I'm going to end up going here, which would be about right here. I took some flashing material, which you can get in steel or aluminum. The stuff I got is aluminum in the hardware store. And I bend up a piece of it that I'll put right here. Now you can tell how much resin I need to make sure I cover everything. That'll do that job. Go to the opposing side, do the same thing. Mix the rest of the resin up to a relatively dry mix of flocks, something that isn't going to move, isn't going to flow out from underneath this. Get a good attachment, plenty of resin on the surfaces. I've got a really good bond to that tube. You can tell by the way it feathers. Now I'll be back with you in a moment after I get the flocks mixed. Okay, we got the flocks mixed up. Very firm. And it ain't moving around. The idea is pack it on in a fashion that ensures that you do not have air underneath it. Now I just rolled up some saran wrap into a ball and stuck it into each end of the tube, so I'm unlikely to pack the end of the tube as well. I'll try hard, but I won't succeed. I want this tube completely, totally supported wherever I can get the stuff to match. Down here on the ends. Oops. I failed to coat that with resin. As I mentioned before, this was 7 shots of resin. I'll make sure I don't have gaps. Now that I've got it spread out, I'll pack it up high here, like so. Get it in the center here.
You don't want clamps for the sheet metal?
No. See, sheet metal is just going to sit in place. The sheet metal doesn't weigh anything. It has to fit very well in and of its own accord. Now we may not get this flux fill absolutely perfect the first time, but we'll have 99.9%, at least to the extent that we know it is not going to require a rework. What I mean by that is that if it's not perfect, it's not going to matter because it will be close enough that all I have to do is fill small holes with a subsequent layer of flocks. And but that will not force me to wait for another cure because the holes in the fill will be so small as to just do a wet layup right over top of it, and it won't have any negative effect on the straightness of the fibers. And that's why we're going through all this. Well, why don't you just do this, shape this stuff and put the cloth on top of it, because the flocks would move like crazy. And the strength here depends on the straightness of the fibers. That is absolutely paramount. And I push down on the bushing and I shift this end back and forth until I get an equal amount of squeeze out of both sides. You have to make more resin than you need to make this work.
Cannot. Those sides, or are you?
Just slightly. Just slightly.
Okay. And there's mold release on the aluminum.
Not in this case. No, it's been laying around for a long time, I won't get a bond to it. Now, it wouldn't hurt to make this aluminum just a hair undersized at 2.9 wide. I made mine slightly oversized. I shouldn't have done that. I'm going to push it back in there. If you make it slightly undersized, you can really clean up to the edge of the bushing and save yourself a lot of work in the long run. So, push that out of there like that. The sounds of Dallas at night. Okay, that's what it's going to look like. And you're all that. Flocks in both sides. If the flocks is dry enough, it'll be very stable. Anything that got resin on it, like this, we're going to oven cure this tonight. I want it rock solid tomorrow. You know, it's a little lumpy. I'll sand those lumps out and get it as straight as I can get it. Next thing we're going to do is run the plies. Starting tapering an inch per section on this side and a half inch per section on this side as we step them in. Centering on this point as the position of load. Back with you at some point. We're going to be doing some micro tonight. We'll be cutting the heck out of this tape. Thank you.
Okay.
Shoot. Okay, we've just mixed up 5 shots west. And we're pushing it. You can use regular old safety epoxy if you want. Now all I'm going to do here is brush enough resin on here to make sure I get contact. I'm just reproducing my core. You can mix it up real dry, and then I'm going to pack that in here. I want to get contact to the core, so I'm going to smear it like this. And then I can't hear you.
You want to tell them about the aluminum backing plate?
Yeah, this is the same flashing that we used on the relay. And I'm going to do this, of course, on both sides. I hope we have enough to do micro for both surfaces all in one shot. That may or may not be the case. Okay, well, completely coated there. I'll be back with you in a moment when I actually start pushing dry micro into those areas. We got a bunch of dry micro here. This is west, aging west. 5 shots. We don't have long. And this stuff is going to go off like Hiroshima. I'm going to let this sit for a minute because the more critical nature of this is going to be to fill the other side before it goes off. But that's largely the case. That's it, folks. We're back with you after I finish both sides of the point. Shoot. Okay. 5 shots was a bit much. The exo thermed on us just as we were getting the last little bit of stuff packed in here. We used the flashing on the sides here as well to finish out the undercut. And I'm very, very carefully scraping off the excess. Just remember when you scrape something with micro or floss, scrape it as though it's going to pull and undercut, which it will. That's almost exactly what I want here. I'm going to resand all this stuff tomorrow and make sure that I'm fully back on. There's my edge, right there. Just really take your time, get a nice fit, save a lot of extra sanding and rework later. But I've filled all this. Remember, you painted resin on all the surfaces you want your micro to bond to. It won't just stick to the surface without it. It's too dry. We'll let this cure up, and we'll re-sand all these areas. Now, the opposing side is a fairly good example of how much sanding is going to be necessary. We'll show you that in our next pieces of landing gear associated tape work. Right now, we're going to go to the Canard saddle we've been doing earlier in the day. Shooting. Okay. This hardened up earlier. The first inch of it, I clean up here. And I go to the other side and I sand this area too. Just the first inch though. Make sure everything that we sanded before, outside, inside, half face, forward face, just the first half an inch or so, is all sanded before we proceed any further. This is rock solid. And Wayne here has gone inside and done the blood test. It failed the blood test, so we go in, we sand all those hairs off so he doesn't bleed. And we're going to sand this side. I'll be back here for the next step. Okay, since last we spoke, we placed the Canard on the airplane, dropped the bolts to the bushings, tightened it up, and used the incidence template to make sure that the incidence was as it was to be. I took a red pen and marked from the inside of the fuselage to the outside of the fuselage, a little bit of margins. I'm going to put silver tape here on either side of this to make certain. Would you check to see if the tape's running on that? Looking to the side.
It's running. You know.
I've never heard that whine before. I'm going to go right around the leading edge. It's important. See this little dip right there? Take a look. Right here. That this area in the interface be surfaced the way you want it in this final configuration, because we're about to take an imprint of this by virtue of the fact that we're going to lay up 2 plies of glass over top of this area, about yay wide, going right just a little bit around the leading edge, and down here to just around this radius, to where my thumbnail is. If this is not accurate, you're going to take that print, and of course you're going to end up chasing that for the rest of the process. I didn't tell Wayne that, so it's not his fault. Butt the layers of tape together, edge to edge. Leave no gap. And then do it on the opposite side. And then we're going to lay up 2 plies of glass here. We're going to do it in safety epoxy, 2014-2097. And I'll be back to you as we finish up the last little bits of the tape on these areas. Okay. There's the first ply. We'll just take it around the corner a little bit. Just around this corner a little. Second ply. Same. The idea is your mark was here. You want to be exceeding the edge by at least 3/4 of an inch per side. There's a fairing that's going to be tied into all this. It's larger than 0001's fairing. The fairing along the leading edge does not dump the. If any of you have read Harner's book, the German aerodynamicist, really wrote the book on drag. And an intersection that's tighter than 90 degrees, you pay a big penalty in drag. And this intersection between the fuselage and this area is substantially tighter. It gets less as it gets to the rear. So a fairing is required at the front of this. At this stage, I haven't designed precisely the shape of that fairing. But I want to make sure you have the ability to handle this at a later date. I'm going to do this on the other side. I'll be back to you in a bit. Okay? Brennan? Wayne is making sure he doesn't get his hands in the shorts we're going to come down here. I've got the 2 bolts in my hand. I don't want to wipe this stuff off. If you can see, we have flocks here, heavy in the front, and I'll explain why in a minute. We still are using the 1/4-inch bolts. We're gonna back ream these after the saddle has set with a 5/16-inch bolt. Okay, coming down slow, down on your side. Come on down, come on down, come on down. Set her in place. Got my bolt in, bolts in. Okay, we're where it's supposed to be. Now we've checked the incidence as I mentioned before, and the incidence was spot on. I'm going to tighten the bolts up. We'll be back with you in a moment after we tighten the bolts. All right, what you see here is a bead of flocks and a shadow, of course. Yep. It's been radiused all the way around to here. And we're going to run this flocks all the way around this corner until it meets the middle of the most prominent point on the leading edge, which is a little higher than where I am right now. Then we're going to run 2 plies of glass on that surface, coming from here, lapping the side of the fuselage at least 3/4 of an inch, and all the way to, again, the center line of that leading edge. We're going to do the same thing on the interior surfaces, from here to the F10 bulkhead, and from the F10 bulkhead forward. We'll be back to you as we're laying up the exterior tapes. And about 3/4 of an inch at the back. And I'm going to come right up here to the middle of the radius, which will help hold things in place in a moment.
Could you do this on a foil first?
You could, but it just takes so little time that I can do it right in place, just as fast as I could do it on the table with a foil. If I was in a real hurry, I could just hit that with a heat gun, and I'd already be fully wetted.
Do you want them back?
Yeah. Biggest problem with the heat gun is it takes all that setup and getting extension cords, and I'd be done by the time you guys got it to me. Right up the back side here. We work out the last little bit of the fit right here when we do our final assembly with the elevators in place. Underside all that out, right up to the leading edge center line here. I'm going to cut another tape. I'll do the same that I've just done here, and we'll be back with you for the next and more difficult phase. One of the last things to mention on this Canard saddle is that when you nest it in place, make sure you tighten up the bolts and reestablish and recheck that your incidence is precisely what it should be. This is going to be the last opportunity you're going to have to do that without having to go through a repair. When we checked this just a few minutes ago, we discovered we had forgotten last night to tighten the bolts, and by good luck and the grace of God, things worked out just fine. Tapes are hard. I've pulled the bolts free. At this stage, you could also take this opportunity to match drill everything out to 5/16, since it's exactly where it's going to be forever. And the saddle gives you correct alignment, position, and you have a quasi-bond between your tapes and your saddle. This would be a good time to ream it out. We're going to do that for you on the next process. Okay, we've brought this hole out from 1/4 inch progressively up through drill sizes, and the last drill we're doing right now is 5/16. cutting very aggressively. Now before I drill the opposite side, drop the appropriate 5/16 inch bolt through that, tighten it up, drill the opposite side. Back to the next step. Okay, we've match drilled and reamed to size. Now the exciting part. I'm just going to give it a good firm bump. Bond our sawhorses from the floor. Fortunately, we have all our incidents set up. Well, we've got a lot of interface area there. I'll be back with you in a moment after we figure out exactly how we're going to do this. You may not have realized it, but you just jumped back 500 years in history. And we've gone crude on you. But before I did this, I made sure I could see that I was not doing damage to my lip here. Remember, this is a box corner on the top side, and I can see I'm getting a debond here on the side. I'm going to put a little pressure on it. There it goes. Here we're there. There is the saddle result. We're going to get the tools out and show you where to mark, where to scribe, and where to cut. And we'll be back with you as we prepare to do that. All right, we're back. It's pretty easy to tell where the highest point here is in this radius. Horizontally right across here. And I'm going to come through here like so. And I'm going to get narrower as I come inboard, leaving myself about 6/10 of an inch width. You can see right through. There's the edge of your. Can you see that?
Right, I've got it.
There's the edge of your fuselage interior. And I'm going to come across here. Give it about 6/10. I'm going to clean this off, and I'm going to go across here and do exactly the same thing right up this side. I'm going to come up off the surface here about 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to go across horizontally. Now on the outside here, I'm going to leave a full inch. Check that. There's my inch. Inch. There'll be more on that aspect a little later. There are my trim lines. I'm going to take a hacksaw blade. Teeth are coming toward me. Don't slip here, because you wouldn't want to get blood all over your pretty airplane. Plenty of that potential right here. If you have an air saw, please do the civilized finish and use it. So this is a disgrace. Well, you get the gist of it. You don't need to see me using tools or going back in time. Just cut this out, grind this out, route this out. It matters not how you get there. Just trim it up, clean it up, sand it so you don't cut yourself. And then we're going to sand this absolutely flat. This becomes the part line between your canard fairing and your fuselage. This portion of this ear is going to become a part of a permanent piece of fairing that's going to end up coming out here into this area. I can't describe it to you at this stage. We don't have enough structure in place to do that. But let's say it's sufficient to say that that's where we're heading. Leave it wide, an inch out here. More if you can leave it out here. We can always add to this from underneath against the canard when we prepare to do this fairing, because we don't want this fairing to be a fragile, fracturable item. I'll be back to you in a little bit. Okay, when last we met, we were repairing what we didn't finish last time, which was We just ran out of flocks, and rather than mixing up new batches, we decided to get lazy. But today, we're going to refill these areas. We put a level across to make sure they were the same height. And then we silver taped a piece of wood, like so. And I bet you can guess what we're going to do with that. This is West Systems Flocks. Doesn't have to be safety epoxy. I want this done today, so I have a little hole there that I'm filling. This resin is still somewhat green, so I know that I'm going to get a chemical bond to these areas that are obviously not sanded. This was done much earlier yesterday, so I know it's not going to bond there if I don't sand. I'm going to overfill. Right there. Okay. And now, on for the rest of the story. And that is, as they say, that. Now, here we go. We're switching from Canard saddle back to main gear installation. What we've done, I've noted that the forward two go together just beautifully without any back drilling, no adjusting of any sort. I have a bunch of washers on each one. I've got one on one side, two on another. Two is really enough, but there'll be one washer per side when we get ready to do the final assembly, because we have 8 plies of glass to install on here, and it's going to come out quite thick, requiring only one washer per side, and a back drilling operation, obviously. So what you've got is your bearing, your KP8, your circlip, holding it in place, holding the end load, and these surfaces are all sanded. Your hands are clean, no oil on your hands. These bushings are in place. They've been pushed in from the other side. You make sure that when they are installed, that they are short of the bearing here, much like your wing bushings that you bond in place. You don't want them longer than the race, or you'll end up squeezing on the bushing and not on the bearing. Now, I don't know if you can see this or not, but there's a minor misalignment between the bottom bolt holes. So I get them close, and they're not off a 32nd of an inch. And unfortunately, you've got a slot right here. There's a small amount of material being pulled out of there, and I'll take the appropriate bolt and washer. Nope, I drilled the bottom one. I need to drill the one up from that. But since I drilled it, I'll pop it in for just a moment to hold things in place. And we'll drill the top one. A little bit of what we're getting there is just a very close fit between that drill and the trunnion. Washers on the table? No washers. Let's just see how this fits together. Go in through the other bushing. Just a few. Nice fit here. And we'll drop the washer on this side so we don't scar it. And then a mock-up nut. You notice these nuts do not have lockers. Are we still in frame? So I'll tighten these up. Then we'll slide the gear inside here and make sure that everything fits. And if it doesn't, we'll show you how to handle that condition. Now I'm going to do this on the other side. I'm going to back drill anything else that needs it. Don't back drill anything that doesn't need it, because it does remove the anodized plating from the exterior of the bolt holes. Back with you in a moment. Okay, what I'm showing you is an 032 shim right here. It took me about it's maybe 10 minutes to make that shim to go between this piece here. Cut it right on a bandsaw, and then clamped it to the surface and mass drilled through it. During the CNC machining of these parts, these pieces all ended up, the forward right, rear right, and rear left, ended up 250 thousandths thick, a quarter of an inch. This side ended up, for some reason, on this edge, 3/16 of an inch thick, and the hole centers were moved about a quarter diameter in one direction. If you put these two MG30s together, you're going to note that there is a difference between the two. This has been taken care of with the requirement of having two plates made that have holes in it. These two are the only ones that don't have symmetrical openings. But the result of our machine work and our placement puts these at the same altitudes. Do not change these because you think they're out of plane. They are not. It's been accounted for. The first 15 sets will have this minor misalignment, and then I'll be able to get rid of the second tool for drilling, and this stuff will all be match drilled, and they'll be identical left side and right side. Okay, that covered. Everything sanded, everything bolted together. Those are your completed MG30 assemblies. We're now going to take gear. I'm going to do this right here in front of you right now. This is my right side. This is my right gear leg. These are my right retraction mechanisms. I pull the bolts out. And we slide them between those two bushings. And we see what we have here. This is the first time we've tried this here at Wayne's place. They are just a little on the snug side. So I can either file the bushing, machine the bushing, or I can file the end of my 7-inch long tube through here. I think what I'll do is I will grind this face just a little bit, and I can do so either on a lathe or I can chuck it into the drill press and grind it down. The miss is just ever so slight. I'm going to check this dimension and then take it off the shoulders. Back with you in a moment. This is how your bushing should fit. Velvet fit. A little bit of pressure through the bushing. Critical fit here is just that it needs to be able to go through the bushing. I've got one over here right now. I can get it in from this direction part way, but I go in from this side, and I can't get it to go at all. So I'm going to, oh, there it goes. It's not exactly a practical fit. We're going to open these bearings up just a little bit, and I used, bushings, thank you. This very carefully going through, pushing it. It's not exactly precision. All you're trying to do is open it up a few thousandths. You can use sandpaper. You can use a ream. You can put it on a lathe in a number of different ways, but I have a velvet fit, nice fit with a file. It can be done. I'm going to pop this back in my bushing. I haven't done the machining operation yet on the end of the bushing, but I'll do that in a moment. I'll be back with you then. Okay, here we go. I've trimmed both bushings. I did it right on the sanding disc behind me, the sanding wheel, and they fit quite nicely. It's making contact, which means I'm probably flexing them just a touch, making sure just net, no interference fit, go right in place. And make sure that your bolts go through nicely and easily. You can see how much of this portion of the shoulder is going to go into the unthreaded portion of this tube. That, of course, is the case. Both sides, both bushings. If there's too much, you can just put you can put as many washers as you need to on this side of the bolt to space them out. We'll repeat it on the opposite side. We'll be back with you in a moment. What we have here is the giant hairless two-legged tarantula with articulating gear legs. You're going to do an assembly of all these parts and make sure that they all fit together well. All the surfaces are sanded, and the next thing we're going to do is make sure that the openings in the side of the fuselage are fully trimmed out and to the part lines, and it's the forward part lines on the sides of the fuselage. There are two sets on one side, and make sure they're trimmed out to the forward edges. You will probably have to do modification of the openings. Your gear doors, your inboard gear doors are provided oversized, and you will do a final trim and fit to them to match the openings when you get to that stage. Well, we'll be back with you in a few minutes. We're going to fit these into the airplane. Okay, I don't know if you can see it clearly. You see that mark right there? If I rub with pencil, you'll see that it shows up. There it is on the horizontal. It'll be much easier for you to see because you're working on a gray surface. My line comes down here. Yeah. Can you see the line though?
Yeah. If you get a lamp out there.
Okay. You can actually see the line here without me even putting the pencil mark down.
Right.
I just want you to be able to see it before I start cutting it. And there it is again there. I'm going to cut this out. Now you'll see here immediately that just beyond me in the background is Mr. Aronsi. He's making up a shorter sawhorse because I mounted this sawhorse directly in harm's way. It needs to be moved forward. So we're going to move this thing as our next step, but we're not going to show you that step. And when next you see us, we will have both sides cut out and ready to drop the MG30s in place.
And the lesson here is?
Don't put this here.
And watch all the videotapes before doing anything.
Give you a nice long look at that area. This corner right here is upper engine mount load distribution area. And I've gotten in here with a very small file. And I've worked all these corners, and then I've scratched it. I can't get in there with sandpaper, but I can get in there and scratch every bit of gloss away until I'm absolutely certain that I'm going to get the best possible bond on all surfaces. Now we're going to go up at least 3, and we're going to go all the way out here to 5. 36 grit is the paper of choice. Now you can see if I'm backlit, it's easy. If I'm not backlit, you can see things in this that are sanded. I've sanded all the way up into here, all the way. I'm going to actually go all the way up to here, and I'm going to sand diagonally across like so. Because after I get this engine mount in, and I get the longeron in place, I'm going to backfill this with dry micro. And I'll make sure this is all sanded and prepped, and I'm going to do all the sanding and prep now, so that I don't have to do it later. And that if I have an opportunity to lap glass over partially cured glass, I'll do that. Save myself some sanding. I always end up bleeding. And where I've sanded, upper engine mount on the opposing side, all the way up, I've gone 1 inch beyond the inside edge of this cutout, the underside here, all the microfill that I did earlier that I've now sanded flush and back fair with my surfaces, all the way down to here. Tapered this glass, which is part of your engine mount, got underneath here, sanded any goobers that were on here off, sanded diagonally across this way. I've gone up the middle 5.5 inches. Up the middle of the spar, 5.5 inches. Now, anything else underneath there needs to be sanded because it's already been bonded in place with 4 plies here, 2 plies here in the back. I've done it all the way to the opposite side. I've gone all the way to the front of the MG30. I preliminarily stuck the MG30 in here and made sure that I knew where the front end was. You can see I've opened these up now. I've moved my sawhorses that were here. Sawhorse is now way up here, out of the way. But I've sanded all the way up. The longeron area, all the way around. I've softened these edges. If you think, oh, I'm going through plies, don't worry about it. You're going to have 8 plies to here, and then you're going to be increasing to 17 plies in this upper area here where low distribution occurs. So don't worry about going through these minor edges. If you've got grooves like this from folding glass, scratch them too. Get as much structural integrity out of this as possible, as much bonding area as possible. And in high stress areas, like the nose corners, remember, scratch all of it. Get rid of the gloss. I'm almost done in there. I've got a little more work in here to do to get this all cleaned up and make sure I'm completely ready for bonding. And the next thing we're going to do is slide the MG30s in here, center them up, and for those lucky of you who have the new molded firewall with the tab that sticks out, they're 3.5 inches apart. That will set up the verticularity of your MG30s in and of its own. For those of us who don't, we recreate the center line, take a piece of lumber that's 3.5 inches wide, and we position it on center line, and then drywall screw it in place. Then we slide our MG30s over top of it and move the front end back and forth to get the gear legs where we want it in the up and retracted position. We'll be back to you in the next step in a moment. No, my mic is on now. I'm sorry. Okay. There's the piece of lumber that I told you about back here in the corner. It's on center. I confirmed that a few minutes ago. All these interface areas have been sanded. You can see I'm sanded outboard here, I'm sanded up above. The first thing I'm going to do is slide back and see if I go place.
You unplug yourself. You're back in.
Okay, I'm still in place, but I don't go all the way back against the firewall, so I need to trim just a little off. I'll get that on both sides. I'll do the trim. Back with you in a flash. We're back. I've trimmed what you saw there. I'm all the way against the back. I could stand a radius to the bottom just a little bit so I could move a hair further aft, but I'm finding on this side that my gear leg is well centered in the well. And I'm going to put the other, now that I've got it back there, I have several operations I need to do. If you can see the bottom in here, can you?
Yes.
I'm going to bevel this outside edge here, full length. So it's the vertical and the horizontal on both sides. That way I can put it in place with drywall screws. And I can do so by drilling down here with a long drill, one there, one up at the front, on the left side and right side. That way I'll know where the middle of the edge of the MG30 is, both on the firewall side and along the fuselage bottom. And the reason I want to do that is that once I have accurately positioned where the MG30s are going to go, I don't want to have to put flocks underneath this thing and then wait for it to harden before I can go on with my laminates. So I'm going to position it, drywall screw it in place, brush resin underneath it, and then pack flocks and do my 8 plies while the drywall screws hold it in place. We'll be back with you in a moment. Several things that you'll be doing at this stage. You have your gear in. You have it all the way against the firewall. You've sanded all the surfaces. You've set something up underneath both gear legs so you can bring the gear legs up. And one of the first things you do in that condition is you look to see if the gear leg inboard and outboard clearly clears the bottom of the projected horizontal from the spar. You can take a regular level underneath it, check the level, make sure the bubble's straight, and make sure that this gear leg does not go below this surface at any point. If it does, there's something screwy that defies description. And all it really means is that you have to raise the MG30s up, whatever it takes in this area, to get it to go above the surface approximately 1/8 of an inch from the horizontal. Once you've accomplished that, don't worry about it. You can use tongue depressors underneath your MG30s. It doesn't make any difference what you use, providing you just get it up. That's where you're going to bond it in place. The next thing you establish is that you have a parallelism between this center printed point on the axle, it's clearly visible, down here.
I got it.
Yeah. I take this and I go to the 1. And then I look from above here, and I am perpendicular to the backside of the spar. And I can average it. There's 17 there, 17 there. Now in the middle, I've got 16.8. Remember, I've subtracted 1. So I'm actually, from here, I'm actually 15.8. But the dimension isn't important. What's important is that I get the same dimension, left side to right side. I come over here. Now I've got the spar low enough so that I'm projecting the line forward and that the gear legs are approximately the same height. I go to this side, I go perpendicular to the back side of the spar, and I get 16.8. Actually 15.8. They're the same. If you've trimmed your MG30s too much on the back side, that can fluctuate. 0.05, 0.1. The width of your wheel well in your strake is sufficiently wide enough, as is the gear leg well, as well as the wheel well, to handle differences of up to 1/4, 3/8 of an inch. We would encourage you to stick as close to the original MG30 shape as possible. Don't modify it unless you have to raise it slightly to make sure you get clearances in this area. If you make a mistake in mounting your spar slightly up or down, that can cause the minor variations that you can see relative to the bottom of the spar to the underside of the gear leg. Now that we've established this position, I have marked the sides of the MG30 distinctly with a pencil, and I will take a long drill bit, and I'm going to drill at the front. I'm going to go right through the middle of the edge of the MG30 on the edge of the bulkhead and go right through the floor. That'll clearly establish the front edge of the MG30. Literally what we've done is the MG30s have set up all the parameters except one, and that is moving the front of the MG30s back and forth to generate this parallelism gear leg to backside of spar. So now I'm going to fix it to the floor and fix it to the firewall. I'm going to find out where it is here in regard to the edge of the MG30s. I'm going to drill through the backside at the top and at the bottom, top and bottom of each MG30. And then at the front edge of the MG30, I'm going to drill 2 holes to the bottom of the fuselage. I'm going to drywall screw it in place. I'll be back to you as I set up to actually drill those holes. All right, we've got the front position here. There's our red marks. We're going to go through this iteration one more time because the back of this seems to have some spring open. I know that it's the same width on that wood as it is here, but I got to make certain that I keep the back end closed as a reference point. First thing I'm going to do, push it back all the way. And I'm going to push it in horizontally, and I'm going to put the drill bit near the top. My fingers are over top of it, and I'm going to drill right through the firewall at the top. And I'm going to go down here at the bottom. And I get precisely the same thing. Come on, Mama. Okay. Now the holes are directly against the sides of the MG30s. If you can see that from there.
Wait a second.
Is it visible?
It is now.
Okay, I'm going to do that now. I'm going to push this over here, and I'm going to do that side exactly the same way. After I get this against the edge and the reference holes drilled, then I'll go to the back side of the firewall. I'll measure over what would be the equivalent of half a distance and drill a hole, 2 holes, one at the top, one at the bottom, that would hit this squarely in the middle. I run 2 long drywall screws into the firewall. That fixes the back. Then I'm going to adjust this again and make sure that the variable I have back here does not affect my front end. 0.05 here can make tremendous differences in where the gear legs are relative to the spar. We'll be back to you after we drill these other holes. Okay, there's the top hole that we just drilled. There's the bottom hole. If you've got some cutoff material from your MG30, you can even set it on there and mark it to find the exact center. Now you're going to see the drill bit exit, I hope, as I push against it and do the top. Now I'm going to do the bottom. Okay. That places my, tells me right where the holes are going to be. I'll be back with you in just one moment. There's the hole, right there. There's the bottom hole. I put this like so, and scribe. I know my bulkheads between here and here. I can put my, I'm not going to put the hole in the same area, but I'll put it approximately in the same area, here and here. I'll do the same thing. Remember, it's inboard of these points. I'll do the same thing here, and I'll be back with you as I'm running the drywall screws in place. Okay, here we go. Screws at the top. Wayne's got, I would have preferred about 1.5 inches screw here, but it will never move. Now I'm going to put one in at the bottom. You're still in place?
Yeah.
There's the length I'd want, right there. It's about 2 inches.
Yeah.
And make sure it's straight in. Zing. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on the opposing side. Wayne's going to change position. We'll be back in a moment. We just loosened these screws up just a touch because Wayne said that we pulled the front out of position, which means the MG30s were slightly different in length. Not a big deal because you're going to do a liquid shim of flocks between the MG30 and the firewall. You're hard up against the lumber? Okay, bottom and top. I'm doing the bottom now. Here we go. Okay, we're in place at the back end. Now I can remove these 2 screws and remove this piece of wood, because if I didn't, more than likely when I went to bond this thing in place, I'd bond that in place as well. Not good. We'll leave you on this note and be back with you in a flash. Okay, remember what we did on the firewall? We're doing the same thing. Here. Now I'm going to do that here. I'm going to do it in the middle.
You don't have your mic on.
So I do.
You do?
The mic is on. Is your mic on?
Yeah. Okay. I think we're okay.
All right. Folks, sorry about the noise. We've done the drilling both sides. I'm going to do it in the middle, here and here. I run my screws in from the bottom, and then I'm going to disassemble everything. Then I'm going to put these back in. No, I'm not going to put these back in place. Disassemble everything. Then I'm going to brush resin underneath all these goodies, push flocks into them. These edges are already beveled, so is the back edge and the top edge. Can you see this bevel right there?
Hang on. We can now.
There's the bevel. You can see it in the shadow. Beveled about a 1/16 of an inch, so I can get a brush in there and then push flocks up in there. We're going to be taping, or glassing, I should say, this entire surface halfway up. We have to get the screws in, preliminary flocks fill done, disassembly done. We'll be back with you in a moment. All right? Okay. Oh, you're recording already?
Oh, was it?
It's recording right now. Yeah. Oh, sorry about that, folks. But there's the belly of the airplane. There's the drywall screws that are in the front. There's the drywall screws that are in the middle. There are the drywall screws that are on the firewall, bottom and top. And I'm going to turn the off on them. I want to show you something that's rather interesting. All right, everything is jigged in place. So all screwed to the floor, screwed to the firewall. Everything is sanded. Everything is beveled. Now it's time to disassemble and to give yourself some feeling of reassurance. When I pull these gear legs off, this thing is not going to move. I'm putting pressure on it right now. You can see how everything's wiggling. It's very stiff. It's not going to change shape when I disassemble all this stuff, and then we're going to start laying out the plexiglass. We'll be back with you then. Okay, we're back. I'm going to show you underneath. It looks as though I need to sand just a little bit right up against the bottom of the spar. Looks like I'm good at the firewall. You can see the gap underneath the MG30. You can see the gap under the spar and at the firewall. What I just realized is the way this is installed is that I can do just this side tonight with the resin underneath the MG30 and the flocks, and leave the other one entirely alone since we don't have glass for that tonight anyway. And the screws have gone in. Let's see if I can get a telephoto back. No, I've already back all the way. All the way. Here's how it appears from here. Everything is sanded. We're going to start our layout process in the next shot. Okay, I'm going to brush resin inside this groove. All the way back. Same thing in here. I'm going to make sure it's wet. I can look inside the MG30s and see the brush bristles passing through the backside just a little bit. Making sure I have, yep, there they are. So I know firewall's wet behind it. I'm not looking at the moment. I'm just doing this for your benefit. And after we stop filming, I'll get underneath there and make sure I can see. I'll go all the way underneath. Can you come around the other side? Come on up. Come on up. Chris, up here. I go underneath here, and I can see the brush bristles coming underneath. And I'm going to do it all the way along. Now this whole face gets brushed. The whole thing. But I'm not going to brush this until after I get my flux work done. My flux work done here and up here. Take a look in the back. Yep, I can see it's wet back there. I'm only going to go 1 inch width on the firewall and the underside of the spar. Then I'm going to brush resin on everything else. Okay, we'll be back with you in a bit. Okay, we're back. Flux in corner. Oh God, that looks like a lot of flux there, so. I've already taken a small amount of flux from my finger and pushed it underneath the parts. And I've taken the liberty of filling those original holes with flux that I've drilled so I could find the centers. So first we push underneath, then we do our radiuses, so it's coming out the other side. I can see it coming through the underside on the opposite side, which I will scrape away before I forget. And I'll go ahead and finish putting this radius on here. I won't bore you with all the details. Back with you in a bit. Okay, you can see the flux work is done. I'm going to brush the MG30 with resin. I'm going to have to back drill these holes tomorrow. And I'll do that before it's really fully cured. But I'll get all this resin brushed on. I'm only going to go right to here with the cloth. Go underneath, 1 inch up on the firewall, along the bottom of the engine mount, but not up onto the engine mount. This layup, if you've gotten efficient, should take you about 2 hours to do. At the end of it, you're going to do an engine mount layup here at the bottom.
You could do it the following day, but it's so nice to work directly on top of a wet, earlier laminate. Everything fits together so nicely. Here's the size of my lamp right there. When I finish splitting this out, and I get back to the next putting the first ply down.
Okay, here we are. This is where I know my ears will be burning because you're going to be cursing my name. This is not a fun layup. You take this into the corner and you take this piece. Actually, you have to have a pair of scissors because you need to trim off the corner. And you trim off a 1 inch by 1 inch triangle. 1 inch this way, 1 inch this way. See again? Okay. The triangle, you just cut off the end. This corner up here. 1 inch by 1 inch. Now, I take that back and I have to make sure that I've got a 1 inch lap on the firewall. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to push that up into the corner. There's my 1 inch. Now, I pull this back around the back end. I've got this thing tacked up here on the resin. I reach up through here, through the opening, and I make sure that I'm far enough aft, which I am not. So I have to shift aft and get that triangle I cut right in the corner. I pull this back up again. The only way to really get this done is to just jump in and lay one up. The first one is the hardest. It is no fun at all. Okay, I've got the first one in place. That trim off at the top allowed me to get that in place. Now I'm going to stick some resin up here to hold that in place for this first portion of the layup. And after I get that tacked and firmly in place, then I'll begin working forward. I wish I could show you all of this, but the top is tacked in place. It's not having any tendency to move. Now then, from here, I'm going to work my way out. Take this back into the corner and make sure it's up against the edge. And bring this up. The next fun part. I gotta make sure I'm all the way up in that corner. So when I start folding this stuff in, I'm gonna end up with bunching. If I want to move fiber here, I gotta pull here. If I have a problem in the corner, I'm going to snip right into the middle of the corner. I tuck this back in, and one of these has to be lapped down and bonded over. It doesn't hurt to have a little more than an inch sanded. When you prepare this, if it ends up going further than you want it, you don't want to have to pull it off just because you didn't have a full the area fully sanded for its attachment. So don't be stingy with your attachment back there.
Now that this is wetted back in the corner, making sure that it is, I'll allow a fold to occur on top of it.
Because as you're putting the first one down, you're trying not to disturb flocks and such, it really is more difficult on the first one than it is on the subsequent ones. It gets easier for every single ply. You start developing a sense of exactly what it takes to get the cloth where it wants to go. Notice I didn't get all the way up here with my first ply. Don't scream, don't pout, don't yell. Not important. It just means that when I lay these up, I'm going to go a little further down with them. Don't get obsessive. Now, I'll get this laid down, and I'll start trimming it. I have a cut I have to make here in the corner. It does help to clean the scissors so that you don't... We'll be back with you in a minute. Okay, we've trimmed across and up here. So the cloth abuts this corner and laps up this edge, but not onto the plywood. We won't do that until the very last thing with this layup. I want it all the way back into the corner. And when we finish this layup, we'll go back in here with a bead of flocks in that corner and in that corner, and then we'll do the standard engine mount layup, 6 inches wide, 9 inches long, and standard triangles cut out of it, tucked into this corner as the last portion of this layup. Okay, we'll be back with you in a moment.
Okay, there's that shot again. You got your hand. Okay. The reason I do that is that I'm going to have a fold in the back and a fold at the top. I keep you from folding it in the corner. Back with you in a moment. Going to go to this corner. Okay, it's the last ply, people. Yeah. Your back is telling you it better be. I'm no longer lapping intentionally onto the back of the spar, on the bottom of the spar, or to the back of the firewall. But if you find you have extra material, and if the easiest thing to do is just to fold it up there and go with it, then go with it. It won't hurt you. For the last ply, you should be doing a lot faster than you did your first plies. So I'm down to about 8-9 minutes per ply. And as you would expect, as you know by now, if you've been doing this, but somehow, miraculously, out of nowhere comes extra glass that you didn't think you had left in here, longer than you thought, wider than you thought. All the way across. Wayne is making up the engine mount plies and to go back in this corner. And I'll stick a bead of flocks in here and here, wet this out, stick that last ply in. We'll be back to you for that last little piece just as we get ready to do it. He's got it in his hand, and I'll show you that application in just a minute. Okay, you've all seen this. I'm going to go in 3 inches and visualize this thing. It's going to go like so, like so, like so. And I know that this is all going to be superfluous from here up, so I'm going to cut it off. That's the triangle sitting against the wood. And I know that this is going to be superfluous down this edge. So I end up with 2 triangles instead. There's the fold in the middle, There's my 2 sods on the edges. And a double layer of soil here. Trying to drive me crazy, boy?
Sorry.
Okay. Now it's time to put this in the corner. After I put a little bit of socks in place, so I got socks here and here. Can you see? Socks in the bottom, socks in the back.
Right, we got it.
Now take a look at the mirror. Oh yeah, it's back there. Skew my out. Gonna clean it up just a little bit. I got a full corner in the back. Okay, I can shorten this up a bunch. Now here I have to make a conscious decision. Which am I gonna fold first? So I'll do the upper one first. Push it back into that corner. Go back up underneath. Talk about overkill. Okay.
Still good on the backside there.
That's the important one to remove. Okay, get that back corner. I take this last flap of glass, push it up. So from here out, folks, it's the same length that you've already done on your engine maps. I'm going to work the rest of the air out of what I can see here on the sides. And we'll let this cure. We'll be back next when we trim and back drill all this stuff. Good night.
Good shot. Very good. Great.
Good morning. We're just starting. We are about to trim and back drill. What you see in the foreground are the tools you're going to need for this operation. It's been about 12 hours since this stuff hardened. You need your heat gun, utility knife, 90-degree drill drive with 1/4-inch drill, and just something to deburr the holes. First thing I'm going to do is do the 90-degree drilling. Now, our gearbox in here is going south, so we're only going to do Here we go. So the first thing we're going to do is drill the 90-degree, do the critical holes, the ones that I have to have to complete the next operation. One more hole at the bottom. There's going to be a top top and bottom, these two holes so that I can put the bracketry back on. The next operation I'm going to do in the labs is these tabs, and I don't need all 4 holes. Now then, hang with me for a second. We're going to trim off this glass. I think you've seen the heat operation before, where you add a little bit of heat to a nearly cured laminate, and this is about, as I said, 12 hours old, and you'll see it does soften up rather substantially with heat, allowing you to trim an otherwise very difficult job that would generate lots and lots of dust. Go ahead and trim all your surfaces, the ones here around the gear door opening. Don't trim into the fuselage if you can help it. And at the end of this operation, we'll be back with you. Oh, the fader. I don't need the fader. Sorry about that,
You got your
people.
left thumb on the fader.
Okay, well, we didn't mean to fade you in there, folks, but here we are back again. There's the lower engine mount. Going to take you beneath it. We've trimmed, cleaned everything up, and we've also cleaned up the opening here, there, and the edge of your MG30 all the way across. I'm going to take you in from the opposite side. For those of you who have a tendency towards vertical, sorry. See that mottled look? That was due to the judicious application of heat and sucking up of resin from the last layer. There's the gear door opening again. Cleaned up at the bottom. That's just under the knife. And I'm going to go in there with this tool, and just by using my hand I'm going to clean up the holes I just drilled. And I'm not going to attempt drilling the rest of the holes since they have to last for another 4. There it is again, the edges and the back. Okay, back with you in a bit. All right, I got the C-sections back in their appropriate places, and I'm going to drop this on. A couple of bolts from this side as well. Make sure I got a line up. Come on, Bubba. Oh, wait a minute. I know they line up. I just haven't gotten them to go yet. There they go. Okay. I'm going to put the other... these don't have to be bolted in for any other reason. You're just making sure that everything tightens together. But this side, I'm going to put washers and nuts on, tighten it up completely, slide the gear leg in through here, put the bolts in place, and then set up the angles. Your next step is to do an assembly. You will have glass this side, you will have these brackets on. It'll be a complete parallel operation, left side and right side. But for the sake of getting videotape into the camera, we'll be doing just one side for this operation. Okay, here we are. We've got the gear leg in position. We've dropped it down. You can see on the floor here I've got these 2 wedges of foam that allow me to adjust height, and in doing so allows me to adjust angle. We're at 67½ degrees. That is maximum angle. Don't go to 68. This position is, I'm going to put lead shot bags here to make sure this doesn't move. And of course I've done the bolting up at the top. It's tight. This is the original trim line. I'm very close to the bottom of the opening. I'm real close and tight here. Make sure you don't have any restrictions here. I'm going to put the A and H arm in right now, and start G'ing for the 17-ply low distribution tabs on the side of the fuselage. All right, here's our A arm and H arm. We've got a bolt in here, as long as it's 3/8. It's a mock-up bolt. You're going to cut a couple of pieces of 1/4-inch material, 8½ inches in length. Your bolt hole on the front one is going to be 1.5 inches from center. That's going to make your material in the front here 2.5 inches wide, which projects beyond the edge of your material 1/2 inch. And I want to maintain that. I'll check it again. 2.5 and 2.2. Yeah. 8 inches, 2.2, and 2.5 inches in length. They're going to be fit and trimmed against the side of the fuselage. Make them 3 inches wide and 3 inches wide for now. We'll trim them down after you get them fitted in place. So cut yourself 2 pieces of high-density foam or 1/4 inch plywood, 3 inches wide, 8.5 inches in length. Back with you tomorrow. All right, we're just going to, we don't care where this is really so much as long as it's against the side of the fuselage. I'm going to put this piece of wood against the side, make sure that I'm fairly square, make myself a divider of sorts. Get my finger out of the way there. Now I'm going to cut that, make sure it fits the side of the fuselage, and then we'll take a drill bit or transfer punch through the 2 openings and scribe a line across the back side of this. After having done so, we measure out and go 1.5 inches out, scribe a line, drill a hole. Back with you in a moment. Here we are back at the ranch. There's the fit. I don't have to have a perfect fit everywhere, but I'm going to have to stick something in there, tape, paper, and then the tape on top of it. We're going to be taping this side. I've beveled it just a little bit because we've got it does, this is sitting perpendicular center line, and obviously the side of the fuselage is not. It's tapered. So I beveled it so it just fits nice and neat. Now we're going to take super glue. I haven't had any luck with the super glue here today. The zip kicker bottle is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. Okay, against the side of the fuselage. Just like so. And it's dead flat against the front of this thing. That might just get me. I gotta pull the plunger up, give it another load. I think we've got it. Wait for a moment here. Looks pretty good. Now what I really should have done is put the transfer punch on the back first. Made the mark on the back side and drilled it. I may have to do this again. I've got a clear, distinct arc across the back. I measure out 1.5 inches, and that's where I'm going to drill my hole. But I'll have to pop this thing free again. If I had another hand back here, hold it in place, make the mark, drill the hole, put it back in place, and then super glue it. We'll be back with you in a minute. Yep. All right, we've got it. We popped it off. We drilled it, and I went so far as to move it away from the position, push the bolt through, we articulate, everything works okay. Now, here's where a transfer punch would be nice, but again, a drill bit would work. I put the other piece of wood in place here, after I've made it fit. Remember, I'm 1.5 inches from here to the center of that hole. Approximately 1.4, 1.6, it's not going to make any difference. But do work for symmetry, left to right side. I'm going to cut the other piece of plywood for the back side and super glue it in place, run the transfer punch or drill against it, take it off, drill it, put it back in place, super glue it, and we'll be back with you for that next step. All right, here we go. We've got this in place. I've got the drill bit or transfer punch, and I would prefer transfer punch. fit up real well here. Give it a good push. And there's my mark. I'm going to go drill this in the drill press and be right back with you. Okay, we're back. Just drilled the hole. Goes right through there nicely, neatly. It's time to super glue it in place. So I pull this back out a little bit. Again. What's it seeing?
Got it dead center.
I apply the super glue. Put it where you want it. Make sure it's right where you want it. And then get out your decrepit zip cricker bottle and hope that it behaves in some other fashion than the way it did before. Well, we'll be back here after we solve our zip kicker problem, and I've got a good bond here. All right, we've got it in place. Pull that, run the bolt right through both pieces of wood. It's coming out the other side now. No bind up. Stays right where I put it. Goes over center. Okay, now I pull the bolt carefully. And I put silver tape on this side, silver tape on this side, and I'm going to lay up 17 plies of glass from here up this side to here, going down to almost to the bracket, tapering 1 inch per ply till I'm to here, with 8 full plies, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, all 17 plies going onto this surface. We do exactly the same thing here, except we have much shorter plies to do. They're only this wide, and they go down to approximately the same height on the opposing side. We remove the gear, the trunnions, and everything that's in the way before we start that process. Back to you then. Okay, I'm going to put my tape in here. Now, obviously, I don't need to stick to the side of the fuselage. I'm just providing a mold release here so that my glass doesn't stick to the wood. Since this is only a jig, this does not belong here on a permanent basis. I'm going to get a knife here, very carefully. Remove my material. And that gap that was in there, I'll stuff that from one side. With saran wrap, so that I don't have a gap that'll end up packing up with resin or flux or something of that sort. I'm having all kinds of luck with this tape. Do the same thing to the opposing side. I'm going to put tape on the forward section of this, butting up against this, like so. And again, we're making a mold. We're molding against this surface. We're going to do the same thing to the opposing side. Lay up the plies, and then we're going to back drill through this hole with a 90-degree drill drive before we do the 17 plies It will take the place of where these pieces of plywood are presently. After our layup and our back drilling, we knock these pieces of plywood away, and then we sand the inside of these tabs, get rid of all that super glue, and we lay 17 plies between the previous laminates. Okay, you can just start. Oh, you're shooting already. It's all right. It's okay. I got you. All right, here we go. It's shooting. I'm going to bring it around the corner.
Yeah, you can't go far.
Yeah, I can.
No, we're out of cord.
Out of cord? All right.
But if you move your arm out of the way. Move your arm
I
out
got
of
to
the
go
way.
all the way back here. That's where I wanted to go.
Wow.
Okay, we're going to show you the tab up close here. I'm not looking through the viewfinder, so I hope I'm giving you what you need. I'm going to swing around this direction. Looking at the inside surface, your camera is actually inside the spar. There's a tab. There's a look at the bottom of the tape. There's a look at the top of the tape. There's a look inside your main spar conduit. There's a look at the back side of your engine mount. And we're done for this part. Before we do our layup, we're going to lunch. Okay, we're back from lunch. And this is approaching 20 hours now of cure. And it's been 70 degrees in here plus. Half of this stuff, and we're sanding on it. We're going to sand to, inch and a half or so below this cut line to here. And our pliers are going to go, the first one's going to run all the way to here. Then it's going to go second one, third one, fourth one, fifth one, sixth one, seventh one, eighth one. So we have no less than 8 plies from here. It gets progressively thicker from here. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and so on. I'll catch the phone and back with you in a moment. I have Mike.
We're on.
Okay, we're back. We're going to give you some measuring. We've sanded down here, cleaned all this up. We found that it is still somewhat green, but just going to be conservative here, make sure that it's really smooth. There's 14 in width. And there is, 21. 14 by 21 is your first ply. And then we're going to go about a ½ inch per ply for the first 8 plies. And width isn't going to change much. They're going to change small amounts. So you can go 14 wide for the first 8 plies.
Show me that 14 again, stacked up against there.
Okay, here we go. 14 to there.
I want to catch your left hand, move it up.
Okay.
Very good.
14 by 21. So I mean 14 by 20 and a half, 14 by 20, 14 by 19 and a half, 19 by 19. Until you get to this stage right there. Then we're going to start stepping smaller increments. I wish I could give you the exact layup sequence. We'll give you, when I come back to you next, we'll talk about that beyond this first 8 plies. But right now I'm going to give you another dimension. We're going to go from the side of this hole in about 4 inches. Exactly 4 inches to be precise. And then we're going to come up this edge. I'm going to put my finger right about there. It gives me a margin. That's 13 inches wide. I'll go down to the bottom here. I'll check that again. Yeah, 13 inches will cover it. I'm going to check it again. 13. So we're 13 by, and I'm going to go underneath this, by 10, so we'll go 13 by 11. You have 17 plies that go in here. They're going to taper too. But they're going to taper very slowly from this side, about 1/8 of an inch per ply as we step back. And our last plies will be very small, so you can use up your scraps in here.
You don't overlap down here?
I'm sorry, yes we do. Thank you very much, Chris. We come all the way down to here, so it's just like the original 19, 20 inches. But we're only going to run them the first 8 plies from here to here, tapering a little less than ½ inch per ply as we come up this side. Then we can start using scraps. But the major dimension here is 13 inches. 13 inches. 13 by 20 is our starts in here. And we'll be back to give you an exact dimension of all this stuff. Okay, we're back with you. Notice we've got the plies all cut. You can see the taper ratio from large to small. Of course, it's in reverse order. So what we do is we place a piece of plywood or cardboard on top of it and flip the whole thing, and then we'll have the large ones on the top in the order that we actually want to use them. And next, I'll show you installing brushing resin on and applying the blocks.
Mike?
Go again?
Mike?
Mike?
Any more?
Mike?
I can't hear you later.
Mike? Yeah, kill it.
Say again?
Mike?
Yeah. Might be ready for a battery change.
It'll give you a low light when it's ready to go.
Yeah.
Okay. You notice our brush resin in this corner?
Wait. Oh, you're recording stuff.
Yeah. Brush resin in this corner. Well, I stopped myself because I realized that I have an armpit I want to have for the rest of my life, not frozen in one position. So I'm going to be working in this corner first. I brush the resin out to 4 inches. I put the flocks in this corner. I put the flocks in that corner, which you can't see. A little bit of flocks and a few minor imperfections in this corner. And a little bit of flocks up here, because when I cut my cloth there, it's going to lap up and end up going into this area some too. So I've covered everything that's going to end up with cloth on it. Take a good close look at that. I'm going to do that layup first, and then I'm going to come over here and do this. We cut the cloth for this one first, but that's what we're going to do first. I'll be back with you as I lay up the first layer of cloth.
Okay, we're on the third ply. There's the first 2 plies down to here, the third ply starts about 3/4 of an inch above. And I'll go to about the same place here on this edge. And the first 2 plies come on right here. You're going to stagger back and forth. You can't control this precisely 1/4 inch per ply. Don't drive yourself crazy. You will find that it will average out. My plies go, this is probably a mistake coming up here on the top. It's not absolutely necessary. If you cut it off right there, fine. You have a full engine mount installation to do up here that will handle all this load stuff, but I'm letting some of this stuff spill over into this area. Not a requirement. Get all the air from underneath it, ply it into this corner up in here, underneath, on top. Just wet it out. Wrap every 3 layers, hit it with heat, and bring the resin up from underneath of the previous plies. It'll keep you from getting a really heavy layup. And I'll put my next ply down, I'll tack it down, heat it up, and then go on to the next ply. Okay. We'll go back to the next. As you can see, I'm not adding any resin. I'm getting lots up from underneath. Like I said, about every 3rd ply or 4th ply, heat it up, suck it up from underneath. I'm going to do another 5 or 6 plies, and I'll be back to you then.
Okay, starting from the bottom, we went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So the last plies are very small. We've got them lined out for you.
5 minutes.
Line, 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
Okay, we got them lined out for you. We're running out of tape, folks. Sorry about that. And you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're backing them up. But don't worry about it as far as the exactitude of it's concerned. Your last 7 are plies, so don't lap onto the spar. And they don't go underneath here. But your first 7 or so do. And that's all that's necessary. All 17 plies come full height, full width. You'll be trimming it down to much smaller later to go around the longeron. And then it's going to be trimmed out here like so. This will get trimmed off as well. We'll be back to you as we start this next layup. I'm going to brush resin in this corner, put flocks in here, brush resin on it, and lay my first ply from here to here to here to here, and they will taper just like the other one did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and then they get smaller this direction. But 17 plies, fully on the tab, full height, full width. Back to you then.